women, including today's guest, Ibby Omole. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
And Dr. Ibby has some amazing background, and there's so much there that I would like for you to tell us about, your background, like that.
Okay, perfect. Number one, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Giving me the opportunity to talk to your community. I'm a naturopathic physician. I'm also an acupuncturist. So I have a bachelor in science, which led me to a master's in environmental studies. And then from there, I actually did another master's in acupuncture and naturopathic and a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. So I did my naturopathy and my acupuncture at the same time. My journey to naturopathic school was a bit of a convoluted one, actually. So I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to work in the healthcare field. And somewhere after undergrad, I just wasn't convinced that conventional medicine was for me. There were too many things that weren't making sense. I had a lot of questions. So yeah, I decided to go to I did a master's, and then that led me to naturopathic medicine, and here I am.
That's amazing. Well, we're so fortunate that you're here and that this is the path that you've taken, because I know you have answers that traditional medicine doesn't. Before we go any further, can you increase your volume? Because my volume is the highest that it goes.
Okay, my volume is at maximum right now.
Okay, I think that's a little bit better.
Okay.
Great. So we're talking about the elephant in the room, which is incontinence. And I was really surprised to learn that 50% of women in perimenopause and menopause have some sort of incontinence. And Ibby and I were talking about like how even with doctors, women are not bringing it up. So there's like this shame around it. And, it's a body, urinating is a bodily function, what's going on with the pelvis. And because women are being silent, they are also suffering. And Dr. Ibby's going to talk to us about the causes and some of the reasons why this is happening in the first place. So let's talk about the most common pelvic health issues.
Yeah, so definitely incontinence, especially urinary incontinence, is the most common pelvic health issue that women present with. And you're absolutely right, Marjorie. A vast majority of women do not tell their healthcare providers that they have incontinence. But before that, let's define incontinence. So incontinence is an inability to control your bladder, right? There are different categories of incontinence, which I think is really important to know, because women feel so many things are normal, especially if you've had children, or if you're in menopause or perimenopause. You're like, oh, you're just aging, or oh, you've had a couple of kids, that's normal. But it's not. So if we're talking about the most common pelvic health issues in women, incontinence, urinary incontinence, is definitely top of the list. And then you have pelvic organ prolapse. So that means your bladder is prolapsing, or basically sagging down. We have fecal incontinence, which is another topic that's even more taboo than urinary incontinence. And that's an inability to hold a bowel movement. So if you gotta go, some people are leaking. There's pelvic pain that women are suffering with. So bladder pain, painful intercourse is another one that I'm always asking women about.
Mhm.
You don't have to take one for the team. If intercourse is painful, there's help, and that should be figured out. That is not normal, and it shouldn't be happening. And so those are the four main kind of pelvic health issues that women are going to present with. But this evening, I'm actually going to focus specifically more on incontinence, because that is the bigger elephant, I guess. Is a huge elephant, and there comes with a family.
Well, I'd love to have you back another time, and we'll talk about painful sex, because that comes up a lot. And can you talk about why they are related and the causes of the pelvic? So painful sex is considered a pelvic floor dysfunction?
Yeah, It is a
Okay,
pelvic floor.
cool.
Yeah, it is a pelvic floor
Okay, I didn't know that.
dysfunction. And yeah, yeah,
So can you
I
tell us how those two are related somehow, or the causes of overall pelvic floor dysfunction?
So, I mean, when it comes to pelvic floor dysfunction, it's normally there are a number of reasons why women could be having these issues. A big one would be for women that have been pregnant, so pregnancy or childbirth. And a vast majority of women that do have pelvic floor issues are women that are childbearing, or women that have had children. Not that it doesn't happen in women that haven't had children, but as women get older and they transition to perimenopause, menopause, then they can also show up with pelvic floor issues, specifically urge incontinence. So when we're talking about incontinence, there are different subtypes. So there's stress incontinence, which is due to a weakness in the pelvic floor, and that can be due to, like I said, pregnancy, childbirth, surgery, hysterectomies. Women are not told when they have a hysterectomy that could cause issues
Mm.
with urination, and that can cause incontinence. Bladder prolapse is another cause of stress incontinence. So stress incontinence is, you sneeze, you cough, you jump. The classical one is you step off the curb to cross the road and you leak a little. So those are all weak pelvic floor, um, causing leakage of urine. You have urge, which is basically overactive bladder. So this is what I call when you gotta go, you gotta go. Those people, they're like, yep, I gotta go. You don't have a second. If you don't, hit the washroom right away, you will have an accident. And I mean, I've had women that have had like total complete bladder loss where if they've just like um you know urinated all over themselves, right, because of that. And that one is really more due to damage to the nerves, to the bladder, damage to other parts of your nervous system. So MS, multiple sclerosis, for some people it will show up as a bladder issue. And they just think, oh, I'm going to the bathroom. So urge incontinence, you're going to the bathroom, you get in the urge. People that get the urge 8, 10, 12 times a day, but you get to the bathroom and not that much comes out. 10 minutes later, you're rushing back to the bathroom and then you sit down. It's like, oh, so they're kind of they're having small amounts of urine come out. Um, and this is the one that's big with aging. So as women age, more likely to have urge incontinence. And that has to do with estrogen and progesterone. We have estrogen and progesterone receptors in the vaginal canal or urethra or bladder or pelvic floor. So that's why women who haven't had children, they are more likely to have urinary stuff in menopause. Whereas women that have had children, they would have started that process of having some kind of incontinence much earlier, secondary
Mm.
to childbirth. And the more children you have, the worse, it becomes. The more traumatic your childbirth is, the worse the incontinence can become. So you can understand by the time you get to menopause, it gets really bad, right? Because now you have loss of estrogen and progesterone to compound that. Um, you have some people that have a bit of both. So they have urge and stress incontinence. And then you have overflow incontinence, which means that you can't empty your bladder. So the bladder is full, but it's just little dribbles of urine that kind of comes out. And again, this is weak bladder muscles that causes this. Nerve damage can cause this, and medication, right? So some people are having issues with incontinence and it has to do with their medication. But they're not really connecting the dots that, oh, I've been put on a certain medication and that's why I'm having a hard time controlling my bladder. You just think that maybe it's normal, or there's a lot of stigma around incontinence. I feel like this is one topic that none of my patients ever bring it up with me. I always ask them, which is the very seldom, unless they're specifically seeking me out because they know I have special
Right.
training in urology and this is what I do. The vast majority of my patients don't tell me. So every single menopausal woman that I work with, I always ask about uh, pain with sex. I always ask about incontinence, because chances are, if I ask 10 women, 6 of them will probably have this issue, but they'll never put it on their form, and they'll never tell me that it's a problem. And then we have other kind of causes of incontinence that are short-lived. So caffeine, especially green tea. Green tea is a diuretic, so it's going to give you that sensation of having to go to the bathroom lots. An infection, like a bladder infection or UTI, will give you incontinence. And then there are certain bladder irritants, like histamines, that are found in certain foods, alcohol, fermented foods, nightshade family, so potatoes, eggplant, tomatoes, peppers, certain vitamins, so B vitamins can be a bladder irritant for some people that are really sensitive to them. And then you just have general food sensitivities. I've had people with urological issues and they were sensitive to soy or rice or something else. And we take that out of their diet and they're perfectly okay. So, as you can see, it seems like incontinence is simple, but it's not really, it's not really all that um, as simple as I think some people make it out to be. And you
Yeah.
really have to figure out what is causing the incontinence, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be different for everyone, right? So when women go to uh, an MD, I'm just going to say it, to a Western medical doctor, um, what and so it's not brought up. So they're really suffering in silence. So I would imagine that they're doing a lot of Googling about around it and research on their own to try to fix it. And so are they taking like pills they're finding online or vitamins that they're finding online to treat the symptoms without addressing the underlying cause? And when they do go to the doctor, what will happen there?
Well, I think, like you said, sometimes Dr. Google is your friend, but a lot of times Dr. Google is not your friend. Right? Because Dr. Google is writing general information. And even if the information is from a medical source, it may not be specific to your particular health issues. In the world of medicine in general, urological conditions regarding women um, is not that well researched or talked about. That is why I went into urology as a naturopathic student. So my interest in urology was because I felt I didn't have enough training in female urology. You get lots on male urology, but very little on female urology, which is why I worked with a group of female urologists in Washington State. And then discovered that when it comes to female urology, a lot of healthcare practitioners actually don't are not as versed or knowledgeable as to what's going on. And so if you think you have incontinence or you're having issues holding your bladder, as opposed to Dr. Google, and because you may be taking supplements that are making things worse, and that is a possibility. Some women are told just do Kegels, which I don't recommend. Some people, their problem is due to tight pelvic floor muscles. So Kegels can actually make things worse, not
Mhm.
better. And so my recommendation to women is if you're having these issues, go to your primary care doctor, whether that's a functional health practitioner,
Mhm.
whether that's a naturopathic doctor, whether that's a functional nurse practitioner, and advocate for yourself to get further testing. So the thing is, we can test for these things. Incontinence is a fairly non-invasive procedure that could be tested for. It's done by urologists or urogynecologists. So the first thing is you have to figure out what's going on, and you need a specialist to do that. So if you have to go to your primary care provider, advocate for yourself that you want to see a specialist, preferably a urologist or urogynecologist. And they have special equipment that will help determine, is this a nerve issue? Like, what kind of incontinence do you have? What's
Mhm.
going on? And then once you have that diagnosis, then you could try alternative medicine before you go to surgery, because normally it's like you have incontinence, here's a pill, or surgery. But that's a big jump, right? In between incontinence and surgery and a pill, there are all these things women can do, like such as seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist, which I am a huge advocate of pelvic floor physical therapists. They will save your life and your pelvis, right? If something is going on, because that's their job and they work with the pelvic floor. Um, but then, doing stuff like just paying attention, like keeping a bladder and food diary to see, like, is there a connection? I've had women that discovered, oh my God, it's the coffee or whatever drink, Dr. Pepper, whatever you're drinking it seems like they're going to the bathroom a lot, but no, they're just having reactions to certain foods or certain beverages at certain times, right? So maybe you're sensitive to wine or alcohol. So you could keep a bladder diary and a food diary, to kind of help source that out to see, is there connection, weight reduction. So for stress incontinence, losing 10 to 15 pounds of your body weight would actually relieve the stress on your pelvic floor, and your symptoms will get better, right? So that could be a solution. There's bladder retraining that people can do. I always tell people, don't hold your urine. So those people that are having the overflow, anybody in the service industry, waitresses are very prone to bladder infections and overflow incontinence because years and years of stretching your bladder, holding it in. If you have gut issues, fix your gut, because your gut is causing some of your bladder issues, or your gut is causing some of the incontinence that you're experiencing. So you can imagine, if it's a gut issue and you're taking a medication, of course, it's not going to work. And I think the reason some of the medications for incontinence and urological issues don't work is because the main reason is not being treated, right? If you have IBS, you have to treat the IBS. There's a high link between IBS, and stress incontinence, right? So, or sorry, an urge incontinence. So IBS and urge incontinence. So if you have an overactive bowel, they sit in the same area in the body. It very quickly turns into an overactive or a problem with the bladder, right? So the problem is in the bladder, the problem is the gut. So you have to fix the gut. Um, so we kind of have to move away from, I have a bladder problem. What can I take for my bladder? And take a step back and say, okay, I have a bladder problem. Why do I
Yeah.
have a bladder problem? Right.
Yeah.
And then go from there. And the results then are like much more sustainable,
Yeah.
and, much better.
Yeah. Well, I love everything that you're saying. Two things I want to add, and then we'll wrap up. Number one is about listening to your body. So, and my background is in yoga's wellness science. So it's very much about like listening to your urges. Like, no, don't wait 5 more minutes to go pee. Like your body's telling you need to. And it's like when you're on the highway, long trip or something, you're like, I'll wait till the next exit. And it's like, no, because that is going to cause problems in the future. And I also use the saying, like, your body's sending you messages all the time, little whispers that something's wrong. And if you don't pay attention to the whispers, they're going to get into yelling. It's going to be very, very loud until you're forced to pay attention. And the other thing I wanted to add is this is about underlying causes. And so you heard the doctor speaking about all these issues that could be contributing to the bladder. And when we're going to a specialist, which can be a really good thing, but they're also looking at it like, oh, it's just the bladder. It's just that, but there could be about the foods. And I love the idea of a diary. I have my clients do diaries as well to track their hot flashes, to track even their sleep and their mood swings. So I love all of this because once you get the information, then you can start putting the pieces together, because who remembers what they had for lunch yesterday? Like, you have to kind of write it down, right? Or else you won't remember, and even the timing of when you're eating. So I love all of this. And I really want to empower everybody in the group and who is watching on the recording, or whether you're live, that there is hope. There is hope. But it means knowing that you deserve this. You deserve to have a healthy and happy life, and that your second half of your life be even better than the first, for those of you who are here, who are in this age group. And I hear far too many women saying, I am just getting old, and they're just accepting it. They're just accepting it. And because they're not telling me this, I'm assuming that they are accepting the leaking. And I'll just say it. So my mother, I remember she used to like run into the bathroom, you know, when she was like in her 50s, she was running to the bathroom as soon as she walked in the door. And I don't think she was so, bless her, but I don't think she was so connected with listening to her body. So like all of a sudden it happened. And so I have seen it, although I haven't experienced it. So if this is an issue for you, this is your body. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like it's actually kind of a miracle that we do urinate. Like the body is so brilliant. We don't have to do anything except let it go. The body is like doing all the waste by itself, right?
Yeah.
So you know, we learned so much here. And as I said before here, underlying lifestyle issues are a huge part of all of this. There isn't a magic exercise or pill or supplement. And it's really challenging to do that unless you have somebody who can guide you, who's helped other women along the way to help you with resourcefulness. Because, you know, Dr. Google is just getting bigger. I Googled menopausal symptoms the other day, 28 million. So, or menopausal solutions. So if you're watching and you are ready to take control of your life, please book a free breakthrough call with me for about an hour. We're going to get on the phone. We'll talk about exactly how your symptoms are affecting your life, whatever they are, and really how you do want to feel. And if there's a way that I can help, I will show you exactly what that looks like. And I'll put the link in the comments below. So is it okay if I call you Dr. Ibby, or do
Of
you want to
course.
call
No,
me?
no. Most people call me Dr. Ibby.
Okay, okay. Because I find that the doctors,
Mhm.
like the alternative, like the non-MDs, they go by doctor, like chiropractor, so it's like doctor first thing.
Yeah.
So how can people reach out to you? I know that you are doing virtual appointments now, right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, yeah, on my website, www.driomole.com.
Okay.
People can reach out to me that way. And there's a link for if you just have a general question. I'm also on Instagram where I do post, you know, there are different things that I do in my practice. So if you're kind of curious, you can follow me on social on Instagram. It's dr.ibby, Ibby Omole. But yep, to, you know, if you're just kind of curious what options there are for you, my website would be the best place to leave me a message, and I respond back to people.
Okay. And it's our body. It's your body. So this is the house you live in. This is your permanent house that you are living in. And if something's not working the way that it should, raise your hand, because there are people who want to help and who can help, so that you don't have to do it on your own. So Dr. Ibby, this has been amazing. I want to have you back to talk about painful sex another time, because that is a whole nother piece of the elephant.
That's true. It's a cousin.
Exactly, exactly. So I will see you guys soon. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.